Greetings, fellow Power Pop geeks worldwide here. You got Bruce Brodeen and author John M. Borack here talking to you, fellow geek to fellow geek. Consider this conversation just to be two record-loving dudes talking about music. Specifically, we are going to focus in on Power Pop because one of the primary purposes here today is to talk about the upcoming update to the Ultimate Power Pop Guide here, which the original version we had come out in 2007. Look at that. Thumbs up there, Mr. Borack, because that was a brilliant piece of literary work. And actually, I'll make a sidebar comment here. I think it's really important because really it was a book that was sort of a landmark foundational piece there back in the day. Now we have so many different books that are out there right now, Power Pop related. But back in 2007, this was something that really wasn't around. Correct me if I'm wrong, John. I think Ken Sharp's Power Pop book was really the only sort of book, correct, that had come out.
There was Ken's book, which was mainly interview based, and he's released a bunch of other great ones since then that are interview based. And there was another one that was sort of more like a discography of Power Pop, but there was really no book that kind of chronicled the genre before mine, and so it was pretty cool to be able to do that. Yeah, we had a lot of fun working on that back in the day, and I can remember when all those books came in there because it was so novel, and it was a big event in the Power Pop loving world in 2007. So we got another big event coming up here too. And we are in the midst of pre-ordering the updated version of this book, 11 years on, and you'll be able to order it past this, but the next couple weeks up until early October, when you pre-order, you're going to be able to get a whole bunch of bonuses. We can talk about that later maybe, but certainly get that on the website, and there'll be a link on this video where you can click to that, so be aware of that. But more importantly, we're going to be shipping, starting shipping the orders of that book here as early as the end of October. So that is coming up fast, and certainly the first week of November, worst case scenario. But anyway, we're just going to talk. So enough of all that, and I got some questions that I wrote down for John. He might have some for me, and I'm going to kick back in my chair. And maybe I'll put my glasses on every now and then because, how old are you, John? Let's start with some personal information. I'm 56. Oh, I'm
Okay, yeah, me too. I shouldn't have said that. I meant to say that there. So
I'm 56. I'm 56 also.
I'm going to do a shot across the bow. I'm curious if you've ever. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions that I get asked, and I'm curious if there's ever one like with a big bang period for the genre of power pop. Notwithstanding a passing comment by Pete Townsend, but in the mid-'60s. But in terms of the music, in terms of the genre, and in terms of that sort of explosive point of origin, do you, looking into the history, see a song and or band in release that really pinpoints the beginnings of the genre?
Well, you know, so many people talk about how it goes back to Buddy Holly, and you know, even before him, I've heard some people mention Bill Haley, which I don't necessarily agree with. But,
I consider that the protein period of power pop. That's a little too far back. I'm looking into something more tangible.
Right. You know, I think the Who were doing power pop even before they knew they were doing it, even before Townsend coined the term in '66 or whatever it was, but songs like I Can't Explain and The Kids Are All Right, and you know, that's sort of the prototype. And then, of course, you had in the early '70s second wave groups like Badfinger, Raspberries, Big Star. Big Star didn't really have the power, but they certainly had the pop for the most part. Not too powerful of a band, but you know, power pops to me is sort of a really wide, all-encompassing genre. As I mentioned in the new book, you know, it's great if it has power. Obviously, that's a good thing, but just has to have that certain, almost undefinable melodic aesthetic, I think. And Big Star had that in spades. But, you know, Badfinger, Raspberries, I think is where it sort of began. Emmett Rhodes to a lesser extent. But around that, you know, 70, 71, 72 time period, That's where it first started to flower, I think.
So is there, if you were to pick one song, separate the artist from the song, but a song that sort of typifies and exemplifies the power pop genre, what would that be? And maybe even your second and third picks if you got a stream of consciousness to answer that. I know mine. I'll show you mine.
One song, right? One song.
Well, let's go with one song, and then let's add it. We'll tag on. Because that's what we did.
It's going to be this hard, Bruce. Let's see. Wow. Don't
overthink it. It's a real simple question.
Oh, I know. It's a simple question.
What is it?
It's a simple question, but a difficult answer. I'd say no matter what has to be up there. And if I had to go a little deeper, I'd say not much deeper. I Want to Be With You. A lot of people say Go All the Way. I think I Want to Be With You is sort of maybe even a more sort of defined power pop sound, because it's got also the harmonies and the jangle and the explosive opening. That's always been my favorite Raspberry song. Go All the Way is great, of course. You can't argue against that one. But if I had to pick a couple, I'd start with No Matter What and I Want to Be With You.
I like your answers better than mine. Because it was interesting. Well, no, they're the same bands, different songs. But hearing your explanation, and because I just wrote it down, I wrote it down as a gut answer, right off the bat. And that's usually the best and most accurate answer, and certainly honest too. But hearing you sort of talk about those two songs, I actually agree with you. I wrote down Baby Blue as mine, and that's only because it was a personal connection to it. But I still think that because that was the song, first Badfinger song that really moved me deep into my soul. It was just that there was something about that song, and I can remember they didn't back announce on the radio like always. And it took weeks until I heard it again to find out who it was. And God, what was I, 9 years old or something like that in 1971? But so that was my personal connection. But I agree. No Matter What is a more archetypal, better perfection of that, and of course it has the connection to the grandfathers of the genre with the Beatles. As well, and that's appropriate. And you're right, with the Raspberries choice, I did go all the way, but your choice is a better one for the reasons that you said. I like that. We'll go with that.
But it's all just personal taste anyway. I mean, you could pick pretty much any of the Badfinger singles between 70 and 74, any of the Raspberries singles up through 73, 74 when they split. And there's no wrong answer. I mean, if you go with those two bands, all that stuff is just amazing.
Well, let's say, what would happen, for example, if you have a beautifully coiffed and beautifully dressed young and properly bearded millennial, and they're pulling out their vinyl, and I was in a store here locally in Fort Collins, and it was beautiful. This book and music store. And they were all these millennials in their 20s were buying vinyl, but of course I'm sneaking up on them, and I'm seeing what they're buying and putting in their stacks. And good Lord, it was awful dreck. Unbelievable. They were buying, copies, beat up copies of Madonna's, what a Blue record for $7 or $8, and, the Gap Band, and, I'm all for the party train, but there was just awful music that they were buying. But let's say one of those, properly bearded, of course, guys comes up to you and says, "Hey, I heard of this little thing about this power pop. You're like a power pop extraordinaire, writer, and pundit. If I was to explore this type of music, where should I go? Online, blogs, websites, bands that I should start with? What would the answer be?"
First, I would say, hey, that's a nice-looking man bun you got there.
Yeah.
If they're a properly bearded millennial, they also have to have a man bun.
The question is, what do they got it all sort of butted up there with,
Right. You never know.
Guys our age don't have to worry. At least I got hair still. We got hair still. That's a good thing.
Well,
you can't bun it.
You more than me, but anyway. I'd say there's plenty of avenues. There's a lot of really great online radio shows. Michael McCartney has his show he's had for a long time, The Time Machine. There's Mike Lidskin, there's Spaz, there's
Spaz. Man, I've been rocking out on Spaz's show a lot the last couple months, man.
There's tons of great, and I'm forgetting a few, I'm sure.
Alan Haber's show, which is now finished up. That was, rock solid always. Really good interviews.
And I'm just sort of picking these out off the top of my head. There's a lot of great ones. That's one place to go. There's a lot of great blogs, a lot of great things you can read about. There's Power Popaholic. There's Absolute Power Pop. Steve Farrah's column. There's a lot of great stuff out there. A lot of great writers who are doing stuff. I might even point them towards my blog, modestly, of course, my blog for Goldmine Magazine. So there's a lot of ways to find out about it. They can go to an International Pop Overthrow Festival and find out about a lot of new bands, or pick up one of the IPO's CDs where, there's 69 tracks, and you're bound to find at least a handful of great ones on there and learn about some new bands. So Omnivore, of course, is releasing and re-releasing a lot of great power pop stuff on their label.
We'll circle back to that with a band answer to that. So we'll lose it, but you bring up something really important right now, because back in the day, there wasn't a lot of activity in terms of business infrastructure for the industry of power pop. Back in I ran Not Lame for almost 20 years. That was was it more than that? It was, but a long time. And then Cool Cat and Jam. There was little labels and distribution outlets there. But the business of pop was very small back then, and it still is. However, you're finding these better funded, purely independent efforts that are going on right now that are documenting the history and also highlighting great new artists. I'm thinking specifically about Omnivore, of course, but also like labels like Spider Pop, for example, who are doing an extraordinary job and seem like they're just totally shifting into gear and throttling up at a higher, more successful and high quality level as well. But I'm curious what your sort of view of these kinds of happenings are.
Well, yeah, Spider Pop, since you mentioned them, that's one of my favorite labels, and not only because I worked with them a little bit. They released my Elvis Costello tribute, Beyond Belief, 50-song tribute back in 2015. But they're just releasing great album after great album. They've released all the Lanny Flowers records, which are wonderful. They're giving away free downloads each month now of Lanny's new material.
Oh, they're fantastic. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the stuff that they're doing the downloads on, because I'm such a drive-by consumer, but those songs that they're giving away aren't even going to be on his next record. Am I correct?
Right, not going to be on the record, and they're all amazing examples of the power pop genre. Yeah. Lanny's just an amazingly talented guy, so they've got that going on. They've got
you got an album over your shoulder there. I don't even know if you realize it or not. You got the Wilkerson record. That's his other side left.
Oh, that's that's Danny Wilkerson's record is probably my album of the year so far. Just an amazing achievement, a great synthesis of everything that's great about this music that we love. Jellyfish influences, pure pop influences. Roger Joseph Manning plays on it, Blue plays on it and co-produced it. It's an amazing record. That's an example of the quality of stuff that's out there now in the power pop world. Spider Pop also has a new Bill Lloyd record coming out that I've been fortunate enough to hear. Oh yeah, and I think it's Bill's best record. I think it's Bill's best record in the last 20 years. It's a great achievement. So they had a cool record from Chris Church that came out last year, I think it was. Just lots of great stuff coming out. And if you know where to look, it's all pretty easy to find. You just have to be steered in that direction. Yeah,
you remind me. I would have forgotten this too with the Wilkerson record about the Roger Joseph Manning reference. I'm going to be seeing him and Jason Faulkner a week from today, actually, at down at Red Rocks, because Beck's coming through. So whenever Beck comes through, I sort of connect up with those guys and say hey. But I forgot about the connection with Wilkerson. With that, I mean, Roger's done so much production work. Jason a little bit too, of course, but Roger's really done quite a lot, and everybody that he's worked with, it's just he takes those projects, I think, to another level that they wouldn't necessarily have gone to, but he doesn't do sort of the Jeff Lynne kind of or Todd Rundgren kind of DNA imprinting.
Right. He doesn't overpower the artist. Basically,
Perfectly
he lets the artist do what the artist wants to do and just sort of guides them along. But he doesn't. Well, not to say Jeff Lynne does this, because I love Jeff Lynne, but he doesn't force his sound on the artist. You know, Danny's record still sounds very organic, and that's one of the things I love about it. Actually,
yeah, I would put it up there with one of my favorites too.
Yeah, actually, Roger played a gig at the International Pop Overthrow Festival in LA this past summer, and then
did you go to that?
Oh yeah, it was like it was 1997 all over again. You know, it was. I
heard some buzz about it. Tell us about it.
It was just a really cool gig. It was just great to see him up there doing, you know, a lot of his new original songs from the Glamping EP and some other EPs he's had out in the recent past. Also, we did a couple of Jellyfish songs, which the crowd just went nuts over. And then also on that bill, there were other great artists too, Linus of Hollywood, Chris Price, who was also playing with Roger. And then
there's another artist that just really blows me away. I mean, I'm surprised that a lot of the people in the power pop community, I don't know why they haven't sort of latched onto that guy's music. It's weird. I mean, it's very power poppy, but it's a little bit more. It pushes the boundaries and goes to the perimeters of a pure pop sound. It's not that it's not classifiable, but man, I mean, he's just an extraordinary songwriter and an arranger.
Oh yeah, he's a major talent, and as you know, he produced the Emmett Rhodes comeback record, and it's played. I think on that evening, I think Chris played with 4 or 5 of the bands that were playing that night at that particular IPO gig.
He was doing the Robbie Risk guest appearance thing.
Kind of, yeah. And then Danny came out and sang the opening track. He just performed one song, but he did the opening track from his album, Everybody Loves to Love, was a song that he did, and it sounded amazing.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, Wilkerson, Spider Pop, Chris Price, Omnivore, it all kind of ties together. But there's so much good music out there now. You know, it's really a good time to be a fan of this kind of music.
Yeah, it is. And the thing that's different than it was 20 years ago, I think, in some ways, is you have more established, successful individuals that, you know, whether they're shifting down in their careers and have some extra money, or they're stepping into kind of subsidizing the arts. Because, you know, let's face it, this stuff really, that you just don't make a lot of money in music. You never did,
right.
Even in a genre like power pop. So it's got to be a labor of love with that. And I got dozens and hundreds of stories related to the Not Lame years like that. So, but that's the thing I really admire about these efforts from individuals, from labels like Spider Pop and Omnivore. And all the other existing ones, you know, Cool Cat's still standing and still working with artists, is that their souls are just are passionately and sincerely connected and imbued in the projects.
Well, you know, it's because they're doing it for the right reason. They're doing it for the music. They're not doing it to make a fortune or even make a living. They're doing it because they believe in the music and they want to get the music out there. And they believe in what they're doing, and they know there's other people who believe in what they're doing as well, and that's really important.
Well, and I think projects, and that was the whole thing that I did back in with my couple decades of work, plus I guess it is in power pop, is what all these others are doing is just creating a platform of access where people can hear about. Kick the tires on. It's much easier now in a streaming world, and the internet is much more evolved and easier to use and able to find stuff. But, you know, book projects like this, I think, are just invaluable resources And we're geeks when it comes to the printed word still. I mean, I have a Kindle. I read stuff on Kindle, and I know some people are frustrated that this isn't going to be on Kindle here, at least anytime soon. But I think there's something to be said of taking a bully pulpit, like you as an author and me with my own books too, that I've written, and keeping it like this, where you can dogtail it and just digest it and just say, you know, there's something about it for us older folks that just connects to the brain.
Well, it's just,
it has high value.
To me, it's having something tangible that you can hold in your hand,
Yep.
whether it's a book or a CD, something you can cuddle with at night, a book, a CD, an album, something you can hold. You know, I was just thinking today, as a matter of fact, I've been assigned to review the new Lindsey Buckingham compilation coming out on I Know, and I was just thinking, boy, I'm going to be so excited when that CD comes in the mail. I can hold it in my hand, read the liner notes, remember where I was when I first heard these songs. And, you know, I still get excited when I get packages in the mail that are CDs or albums or anything new or old. It's just having that piece of media, no matter what it is, you know, sort of like a marriage, to have and to hold forever and ever until death do us part. I think that's really important.
Good times and bad times, and shite music and transcendent music.
Right. But I think that's just, you know, that's an important part of the whole process, is to have that.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. Like, I have 2 copies of the original book still. So here was my original. You're not going to be able to see this here, but you can see it's all like crumbled up. I spilled coffee on it. You know, I'm not really a collector. Everybody always assumes I'm a collector. I'm a passionate consumer and digester and gorger of music. I'm notorious for, like, when people came to the Not Lame offices or my home, it's like when they wanted to borrow something, if they got it, it was like I would grab a box and say, grab 30 CDs, bring back 30 CDs, and, you know, try to keep them together and bring them back in 6 months. To me, it's about the experience. And so this well-worn book, I mean, it's ridiculously messed up, is representative of what you were saying, is just living this stuff. And I know people are more collectors, and they're going to get this new updated version of Shake Some Action too, and you know, be very lovingly and meticulous in their care. However, my copy's not going to be that way. You know, I'm going to write it.
Won't either. Honestly, I've got a couple of extra copies. The original copy that I got when it was first released, I've got that one, and then I've got a copy that I'd actually given to my mom when the book first came out, with an inscription to her. So after she passed, I brought that home. I have that here. That means a lot to me. And then I have a copy where I carry it around with me every time I go to a gig, where I might see some people who either wrote material for or are covered in the book, and I'll have them autograph it. So I've got.
Oh, do you? I didn't know that. Yeah. All these years, I didn't know you were doing that.
Yeah, so I've got a copy with Dennis Dykin of the Smithereens autograph, Matthew Sweet's autograph. You know, all sorts of different people. Just for the heck of it, you know. And it's dog-eared and it's ripped a little bit, and the cover's kind of munched, but you know, it's just a cool memory for me. So yeah. I get what you're talking about.
Well, let's talk. Actually, let's just talk to segue ever so crassly and commercially into talking about the new book. That wasn't meant that way. None of this was planned. But it's a good time to sort of just bite down into the new book, because this has been in the process. I was looking over my notes when we first started talking about it. And do you know what year we started talking about it? The first time it was like...
It was 2000, a long time ago, I guess.
Yeah, it was 2011. When I went back in there, it was just like, hey, keep this in mind, John. Like, when 2017 rolls around, it would be a good time to do, you know, an updated version of it. And then we had some back and forth in 2012, and then we knew It was like, okay, a project like this takes, but what a lot of people don't realize is that a project like these takes many, many years to come together. They really don't come together in months or a year. It takes years.
Yeah, no, it does. And especially when, like you and like me, this is not our full-time gig.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
You've got another gig. I've got another gig. We both have families, other obligations. You know, I write for Goldmine. I do a lot of volunteer work, play a little bit of drums. And, of course, I've got my family. So my kids were growing up during that time period. I also switched jobs during that time period. So that, you know, took a little bit of time. So, you know, pretty much I'm writing these things that I write after 9 o'clock in the evening and staying up till 1, 2 in the morning because
yes, you are. Your
so
emails come into me, you know, usually at those hours. I'm getting emails from you at, you know, midnight, 1 o'clock regularly when connected to this project.
Right. So, you know, it does take a little bit of time, and you don't do everything all at once. You do a little bit here and a little bit there, and you hear some new music. Oh, gosh, that's got to go in there.
Yeah.
And you're constantly shuffling the top 200. You know, in this new edition, there's, I think, nearly 60 new bands in the top 200. And I was constantly, almost up until the very end, actually, it was literally almost up until the very end of configuring the top 200. I was moving some up the list, moving some down the list, taking some off, putting some on. It's difficult, you know, and still there's going to be people who are thinking, why wasn't this album in there? Why is that album in there?
What is your answer to that?
You know, it's all my opinion.
Exactly.
You know, that's what I tell everybody.
Your own damn book.
You know, yeah. You know, that's what I tell everybody. It's just an opinion. It doesn't mean it's right. If you trust my opinion, then maybe you'll trust what I say. If you don't trust my opinion, you can point your finger at me and laugh. That's fine. But as long as you read the book and enjoy it, get something out of it, and maybe get turned on to some new music you weren't aware of previously, then everyone wins. That's what I think.
Yeah, my whole passion in the business of music for 3 decades was all about the discovery of my next new favorite band. Whether that's a recent band or new band or from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, or 10 years ago. But that's always been my burning passion, is that exploration and journey into the new. Whatever the new is, wherever that place is on a timeline is irrelevant to me, but it's all what's next. And of course, I have my mainstays and stalwarts and favorites that I continually go back to because that's what we do. Right. I mean, books like Shake Some Action. I have my Power Pop Prime books on my desk here because I'm working on the next volume in that here right now. Is, you know, the anchors in the bay for, you know, boats where you can ride out your dinghy and go check out, pull off the shelf, in this case with this shitty metaphor that I'm coming up off the top of my head. But you go out there, you pull it off the shelf, and you set the sails and say, okay, what do I need to rediscover? What did I miss the first time around? And what is deserving of a re-engagement, re-listening to, because there's so many records that I rediscover and just missed the first, second, sometimes even third or more time through, and then all of a sudden epiphany arrives.
Oh yeah, well, you know, that's the great thing about music, is no matter how much you might know or think you know, there's always more to discover, and it's not always new stuff. Amen. You know, it could be old stuff or new material from old artists. And I have a great example. I was writing an article for Goldmine last night. It's a segment that they have in the magazine called Quick Picks. So it's pretty much 140 words, sort of like a tweet, 140 words or less on four new records. And I had put in one power pop one, I had put in one oldie, and then I thought, you know what? I'm going to check out this new Willie Nile album I got sent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I've never really heard that much of Willie Nile's stuff. He was just somebody who was never really on my radar for whatever reason. I was familiar with him. I heard the whole oh, he's the new Dylan, he's the new Springsteen from the 80s,
and
whatever.
boy, that first album was very limp, you know, compared to the press outings of the time, because I bought that, buying into that like we all did, man. You know, Elliot Murphy and, you know, Willie Nile and Steve Forbert, you know, all the next Dylans.
Well, I put this new record on, and again, I'm a neophyte to Willie Nile. I wasn't really that familiar with any of his music. I knew who he was, but I hadn't really listened to much of it. I put this new record on, and I'm like, holy crap, is this thing ever good? The songs were solid. The performances were solid. There were songs that reminded me of Springsteen and the E Street Band, but in a good way. Just a lot of really passionate lyrics, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really great. And if I hadn't have gotten this in the mail to review, and I don't even know how I got it or who sent it to me. It just sort of showed up in my mailbox. But you know, I put this thing on, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this thing is great. And that's the cool thing about being a music fan, power pop or whatever. Yeah. When you make those discoveries, you feel like, you know, you're kind of panning for gold, and I found something. I've got this little nugget here. This is awesome.
We should figure out something to sort of start some, I don't know whether it's start a blog or a Facebook page or something like that, maybe related to the book. So people can sort of share stories and epiphanies and pull out old copies and start screaming at you. Maybe that's not a good idea, actually, because somebody like actually what a lot of people don't realize is that someone like you, and me to a degree back in the day too, but definitely, you know, pop reviewers or reviewers in general, you take a lot of heat. And there's a lot of war stories connected to writing books like this and writing reviews that is it's ugly and unpleasant. And I've always had great empathy and respect and support because I consider you, and this isn't, I'm not trying to be gratuitous here, but I consider you the most courageous of the pop writers because you were always and have been consistently willing to just state your authentic, honest position and feelings about a record. And when somebody came up short and it was mediocre or it was crappy, whatever it was, or great, you called it like it was, just like baseball fans that we are. You know it's imperfect. You're crouching down behind it. You're calling balls and strikes, and that's what it is. But, man, you have taken – I don't know if you want to share any war stories there without naming names, but you got hundreds of them.
I've got a lot of war stories. I'd rather not share them because I don't want to name names.
But, come on, let's name them. Let's really make some enemies for you, John. That'll sell books.
Some people who are watching this will know some of the names and know some of the stories. But, yeah, you know, I'm not sure if I pride myself on it or what, but I am one of the few pop reviewers who will give an honest opinion. A lot of people will say, well, if I don't like it, I'm not going to review it. Well, you know, everything can't be good. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's great out there. There's a lot of stuff that's good, and there's a lot of stuff that's not quite so good. And, you know, maybe back in the back when I was a younger man, I might have been a little bit too forceful in those opinions. Now I try to sort of offer them as constructive criticism. They're not always taken as well as I think they should be. And I do have a lot of stories over people who have threatened me or have called me out on social media or have sent me nasty emails, you know. But at the end of the day, I try to just do and say what I believe. And again, it doesn't mean it's right. It just means it's my opinion. And everybody can have an opinion. And now with social media, everyone does have an opinion. But you know, again, for people who follow my writing or have followed it over the years, people, at least from what I've heard, they enjoy the fact that I'm honest, and they can tell when I think something is, you know, this level, or this level. And to me, you know, everything can't be good. There's got to be different degrees of how good things are. And that's what I try to do. I try to share those opinions of mine and what I think. I never try to get personal. I never try to hurt anyone intentionally. But I do offer constructive criticism. A lot of artists don't like constructive criticism. I've had this discussion with artists and other journalists, and I've told, you know, I offer constructive criticism. If you don't want constructive criticism, don't send your CDs to a critic. Play them in your bedroom for your mom and dad and your friends. They'll love it. They'll tell you what you want to hear. I might not always tell you what you want to hear, but at least I'll offer you my honest opinion, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sort of glad that back Not Lame went from like 1994 to 2010, and then obviously Pop Geek Kevin had some years there too, but I'm sort of glad that social media wasn't part of that, because my mission in Not Lame was very different, but the times were different back then. So like people would listen to what you're saying, and it's like, well, you know, I was always the extremely highly recommended, very highly recommended guy, with you know, the over the top effusive praises. But one of the things that I didn't have the opportunity to sort of tell people back in the day was everything that appeared on a Not Lame catalog or website was very carefully chosen. To only be, you know, good stuff, because all of us back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and Double Knot certainly, too, had to buy stuff without hearing it. And it was a dangerous way to, you know, be, you know, a music gourmandizer, because you just had we talk about blood in the trenches. You know, you just, all the records that we bought that sucked based upon what people wrote about. So that's why I always was very picky about what was there, so it would have a reasonable level of goodness, and then greatness, and then always dropped references up the kazoo that only pop geeks would really understand. I spoke in my own language. I mean, you read through my writings. I mean, they are just an editing nightmare. And it's, but I had my own style, certainly.
Right.
And it wasn't for everybody.
Right. The great thing about what you did, though, and I'm not just blowing smoke here either, but the great thing about what you did is that you were so passionate about the music, and it showed in your description of the music. And of course, yeah, you were the extremely highly recommended guy. And maybe to me, a lot of it wasn't extremely highly recommended, but you thought it was, and I respected that. And much of it was. I mean, so much great music came out of Not Lame. I mean, people will see when they read this new book, there's a lot of Not Lame artists in there. There's a lot of independent artists. There's a lot of Cool Cat artists in there. I mean, there's a Spider Pop artist in there. There's just all kinds of really cool independent label stuff. And to do this, you
have all independent label now.
Yeah, whether you're writing about it, whether you're making the music, or whether you're releasing the music, you have to be passionate about it. Otherwise, why do it? You know, we're not going to be millionaires doing this thing. You've got to love it. You've got to love what you do.
Yeah. I know you can't reveal anything with what's appearing in this book yet. It's a little premature. But any kind of surprises that you sort of encountered as you were writing this? And I mean, because I remember looking at your initial lists, by the way. I found some other stuff from old emails, which I haven't talked to you about, from like 2013 was an original, even though it was many years off too. But back in 2014 and 16, you had different sort of drive-by gatherings of where you were at, and where you ended up was completely different than where you were 3 years ago, 2 years ago, with a lot of new releases that have come out in the last couple of years, because this only goes up, we should talk about this, it only goes up to 2017. But there was a big changeover from what you had in 2015 and up until this year.
Yeah, well, you know, as we get older or as we mature or the more we hear, maybe our tastes change. And if you were to ask me, for example, today, what's your favorite Beatles song? I would tell you, You Never Give Me Your Money. But if you would have asked me but if you would have asked me 3 years ago, I would have told you Andrew Bird Can Sing.
Yeah.
And I can make strong cases for me for both of those songs. But tastes change and people change over the years, and maybe you connect with a certain album in a different way when you listen to it again, as opposed to if I listened to it 10 years ago. You know, there's some stuff that's in the book now, the new version, that's older music, but for some reason I didn't have it in the first book. And I listen to these records now and I think,
what did I miss?
Why the hell didn't I have that in the first edition? Why didn't I have Sorrows in the first edition? Why didn't I have Van Duren in the first edition? You know,
Van Duren wasn't in that. That's interesting.
Yeah, the big example, and it goes the other way too. The big example is, why the hell did I have the Click 5 in the first book? I don't know. I don't know.
Dude, I hated that one in there. Oh, I hated that. I never told you that.
And a lot
never,
of people
ever told you that. I thought that was just like, what were you thinking? Because it wasn't my job as sort of the publisher to sort of get in the editing ways and make any editorial comments. I was always that way with the label, too. I mean, it was just you empower your talent to do what they do. But the Clickbot was like, John, what are you thinking?
I know.
I mean, it's a fine record.
I was thinking. I must have been under the influence of lack of sleep or something. I don't know.
Well,
but it was,
there was a lot of that stuff going. That sound was going on. We got a little problem with the video here. I think it fixed itself. But that sound, that sort of glossy major label, formulaic, so-called power pop, melodic rock, was pretty popular then. You know, there was a lot of bands going on in the middle of the double outs in the late there.
Well, and that particular album had the Fountains of Wayne influence. Adam Schlesinger wrote the big hit on. But I look back now and think, you know, I just made a mistake. I screwed up, whatever. Or at that point in time, for whatever reason, I liked the record, and now I haven't listened to it in 10 years. And who knows if I will ever listen to it again. I don't know. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I did re-listen to everything when I wrote this new edition. I re-listened to every album that was in the top 200, front to back. And all the new ones that are in there, I listen to those front to back. And all the ones that were in there, listen to those also, beginning to end. And a lot of other albums that I thought, I wonder if this should be in there. I re-listened to those again as well. So this wasn't just some sort of frivolous exercise. There was, you know, a lot of work put into it, as much as listening to music can be called work, I suppose. But yeah, there are some surprises. More, I think, along the lines of maybe where things are ranked as opposed to where they were previously or where they weren't. Some albums made some big jumps. Some albums made, you know, have dropped a little bit. It doesn't necessarily mean the quality is any worse. It just means I feel differently about them now for whatever reason.
Did you have any kind of methodology for that ranking? Quite honestly, that would be a nightmare for me to sort of have to come up with a top kind of list. It's just I never operated that way, but a top 100, top 200 list would have me, you know, very sleepless, quite honestly. Did you have any sort of process and way that you went through to sort of evaluate that, hey, we got this in the right place in level?
You know, it's not really a technical sort of exercise. It's more of a, how do I feel about the record? How consistent do I think each record is? It's hard to find a ton of records that are perfect front to back. There are very, very few. But I think I can, you know, pretty much say everything in this book that's, say, in the top 40 at least. I don't have the list in front of me. But everything that's in the top 40, I think, is front to back outstanding without any really weak tracks on there.
Right.
That was one thing that I was thinking. And just sort of gut feeling. I'm a guy who goes on gut feelings a lot. I think maybe I underrated in the first book some of the pure power pop records like the Beats' first album, Get the Knack, the Plimsoll's first record, the Records' first and second albums. I think maybe I underrated those a little bit. That's been rectified without giving too much away. That's been rectified in this book. Also,
you know what album by the Records, though? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have to be a geek and ADD and inject here. But the Records record that I pull out most often is Music from Both Sides. Always has been. Isn't that weird? Yeah. I mean, it's horrifically produced. And it's just so muddied. But I just love the songs. I just love the vibe on it. But sorry, I had to take a time out there with an ADD injection there.
Sure. No. I mean, you know, I'm one of those guys who loves Big Star Third. You know, a lot of people would think that's not even close to the first two Big Star records. Well, to me, it is. You know,
it is.
And I didn't really connect with it in that way until I got a little older, and some of the themes that are covered in that record started hitting me a little bit. And I'm thinking, gosh, this is the sound of somebody falling apart.
Yeah, it is a soul breaking.
But it's a beautiful sort of sound of somebody falling apart in many aspects. And it's just such a personal, creative, unique record. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't make this book, but for me, I think I pull it out almost as much as I pulled out the first two Big Star records when I want to listen to some of their stuff.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, for me, I have the classic story where on January 10th, 1975, I was 12 years old. I went to Woolworths and bought 3 records. The Hot Dogs on Ardent Record for 97 cents. The drag version of David Bowie, The Man Who Sold the World, and Radio City. And I put on Radio City, and it was, that very young, 12 years old, and the whole world changed. There was something that just immediately rewired, and I was different. This is all I can say. There's many different records that have done that, but that was one that was just really put me on every bit as much as Iggy Pop and Mark Bolan. That Big Star Radio City record put me on the path to work in the music industry.
Wow. With me it was different. I didn't get into this type of music really until I was a senior in high school, freshman in college. And I'm not sure what got me into it other than maybe reading something in Cream magazine or Rolling Stone. Oh, these guys sound a lot like the Beatles. Well, gosh, the Beatles are my favorite band ever. If they sound like the Beatles, they must be okay.
Had you never encountered Trouser Press or Bump?
Not at that point. Not
really?
Until probably, I caught up to a lot of this stuff later in the game. So maybe Trouser Press, probably I didn't get into that until like 82, 83.
Yeah, and then they were gone in another couple of years.
Right. I never read Bomp when it was originally put out. So I came into everything sort of later. And speaking of Big Star, I didn't get into them until I was in a used record store and found the twofer of Radio City and #1 record on vinyl, which I still have.
Yeah.
When it was re-released, but that was probably 6 years after it was re-released. So, before that, I was listening to a lot of, like a lot of kids in high school, a lot of AOR, Foreigner Sticks, Journey, Kansas, that sort of stuff. And I still enjoy a lot of that, but it's become so overplayed on classic rock radio. And so I guess I was looking for something a little different. Mm-hmm. And power pop and punk sort of provided that for me. I'm a huge Ramones fan. And I've been a Ramones fan ever since like the early 80s, a little bit later in the game there too. But
that was one of those records that was a big transformative thing for me a year later when that came out. I just, never heard it. Well, of course, none of us had heard anything quite like it, quite honestly. Even the older, I was a kid, young teenager, but that definitely wasn't anything quite like it. So what Ramones record was it that you first heard where it just like hit you in the face?
I think the first one that really got me probably would have been Pleasant Dreams, the one that came out in '82 that
really?
Graham Gouldman produced, and then I sort of went backwards from there. And I think the way I learned about the Ramones originally, I had heard of them, but I hadn't really purchased anything. And then I took a class in college called The History of Rock and Roll. And the teacher...
My college certainly didn't have that.
Yeah, it was an easy A, I'll tell you that. But the teacher, I still remember, the instructor's name was Mr. Josephson. He looked like Buddy Holly if he had maybe been embalmed for 10 years and then woke him back up. It was a little bit strange. And he would play all these clips of songs for us. And he played 2 or 3 Ramones songs and mentioned that the Ramones specialized in, quote, psychotic drug songs, unquote. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know about that. But he's playing Sheena as a punk rocker. Doesn't sound like a psychotic drug song, but man, it sounds pretty good to me. I like this.
Well, the Ramones got me thinking about sniffing DEET. Formaldehyde, and I was like, what am I missing? All I've been doing is this pot thing. Is there something more? They always had me very curious about what was going on down in New York City that wasn't going on in Boston.
Right. Well, and then the whole argument against the Ramones a lot of people have is, well, it all sounds the same. Well, maybe it all sounds similar, but it's all good. So if it all sounds similar, that's fine with me. only so many chords you can play, and I don't know. Every time a new Ramones album came out, up through maybe like 87, 88, I was all in. I mean, I just love all that stuff.
So actually, playing few chords is a nice segue into talking about Popdudes. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that. In all seriousness, part of the project here that's coming bundled with this book is a CD, as we did with the 2007 edition too. And there's two things I want you to talk about. One, the Popdudes. Give a little history of that. What's on the CD that's going to come with the book. Whatever you want to talk about there. And then also, let's talk about the bonuses that are going to be available here the next couple weeks. With all the unreleased articles from the first edition, and then the unreleased and rare tracks coming with this digital compilation.
Ooh, well, starting with Popdudes.
So I'm going to kick back and I'm going to just listen, John. Go ahead.
All right. Well, let me tell you a story, Bruce.
Yes.
Popdudes began, I guess it would have been in 2001, but it really goes back a few years earlier. I was shopping at a record store. It used to be in Orange, California, the city of Orange. It was called Pepperland Music. They specialized in Beatles stuff, and me being a Beatles nerd, I would shop there quite often. And I was in there, and I saw at their counters, I was checking out a little display for this album by a band called Sparkle Jets UK. And I'm thinking, oh, a British band? All right. And it had a description saying, if you like Beatles, if you like the Beatles and like Electric Light Orchestra, you'll love this. And I'm thinking, okay. And it was $3. So I'm thinking, okay, how can I lose, right? So
Which record was that? Was that the first one?
That was In Through and Beyond, the first record, yeah.
So you hadn't encountered them yet at any IPO festivals or Poptopia? You didn't see them?
They were not part of that scene yet. They were sort of, stuck here in the wasteland that we call Orange County.
Yeah.
And so I purchased the record, and I really liked it. And I think there was a way to contact the leader of the group, who was Mike Simmons, or one of the leaders, I should say, who was Mike Simmons. And I contacted him. And I don't remember the specifics, but one thing led to another. We ended up meeting up. Mike is probably a bigger Beatles geek than I am, if that's even possible. And through that, I introduced him to David Bash, and then that's when the whole IPO thing started with Sparkle Jets, and they became part of the scene and played a lot of shows in Orange County, up in LA. I think they toured a little bit. They signed with, what was that label?
Oh,
label.
Smile.
They released their record.
Yeah.
But Mike and I became really fast friends, Mike Simmons and I.
You did.
And I would go over his house to listen to music and whatever. At that point, I hadn't played any drums in, it would have been probably almost 15 years.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, I had sold my kit when I was 25. Hadn't really played that much before. I would just screw around in my parents' garage. Then when I moved out and got married, moved into a third-floor apartment, I thought, well, people won't take kindly to drums in a third-floor apartment. Better sell these things. So I did.
Yeah.
Didn't really play. And then when I was 40... when I turned 40, my wife bought me a drum kit because she knew I'd been talking about wanting to play. And she's been regretting that ever since, I think, that she did.
Sorry. Oops, Christy.
Yeah, sorry. So she bought me that drum kit, so I would mess around. I guess Mike and I had talked about it. And he had a studio in his home in Fullerton, California, where he lived at the time. And so he was like, yeah, let's come over and just mess around and play some stuff. He's also been regretting that ever since because, it sort of went from goofing around to, hey, let's jam a little bit. Oh, hey, let's record some stuff just for fun, whatever. And then, let's play some gigs. Why not? So we would. I
remember those first gigs.
Yeah, we would contact whoever was around and maybe wanted to play. So, Kenny Howes, when he lived out here, played with us quite often. And, so many people in the LA pop scene. Severo, who later went on to play with the Smithereens, he's played with us. Just everyone has gotten up on stage at one time or another.
But it started off as more of a covers band, and then every now and then you would write an original. And
right. It was sort of like a loose collective of people getting together, mainly to play covers, either at IPO gigs or other small gigs or parties or whatever. And Mike and I just had fun doing it. And we recorded some originals. We recorded an original that his bandmate Susan West had written but never had recorded, called Good Morning Sinners. I think that was one of the first things we ever recorded. So I would go over to Mike's house and we would just record this stuff, having fun. I would bring my daughter Kayla with me when she was, 3, 4 years old, and she'd be listening to music. And, Mike would put on Disney videos for her in the other room in his house, so she'd be able to watch those videos while we were recording. And, there's session tapes that he has where you can hear Kayla in the background, the 3-year-old girl.
I think you have Progeny on this record, on one of the songs, don't you?
Do I?
I think you do. I think I recall when I listened to. I think there's something from one of the kids.
I don't even remember, honestly. I know Kayla sang the opening segment on a song we did when I was with the band Receiver with Ken West. We did Goody Goody Gumdrops for the Bubble tribute that was released on Not Lame. She sang the little opening there when she was like 3. That was recorded in Mike's studio.
I remember that.
But so Mike and I just went on from there, and every once in a while I would bug him, hey, let's record some new stuff, and he would begrudgingly say, okay, and we'd record it.
So the CD that's going to be on, we're going to have, I think it's 24 songs. So it's chock full.
Plus one hidden bonus track.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I guess we got a couple people who are manufacturing about it.
Mike and I were doing some back and forth with the finals on the artwork here the last couple days. So that's that will be a surprise for me as well. I look forward to that. So you got 24 songs, most of them covers, correct?
Yeah, there's probably about 5 or 6 originals, and it's all stuff that I co-wrote. I can't play an instrument other than drums, so I don't really write music, and I can't read.
Drummers suck when it comes to being songwriters and singers, though. I mean, did you diminish?
Oh, I definitely suck when it comes to being a singer, although I do sing background vocals hidden deep on one of the tracks on this compilation. But what's on the compilation, stuff Mike and I have recorded over the years, dating back from 2001 or 2 all the way up to this past year. And there's all sorts of other people that I've recorded with as well. If Mike wasn't available, there's some stuff I recorded with Robbie Rist. Mm. There's a song on there that Michael Carpenter, the pop guru from Australia.
I've heard of that guy.
I'm sorry?
I've heard of that guy, Michael Carpenter.
Yeah, he used to be on some label called Not Lamb.
Not Fame? Not Fame?
Vaguely remember him. But no, Michael is super talented, as everybody is who's on this Popdudes CD.
Yeah, he is off the charts.
I've been so blessed and fortunate to work with so many people, because it's really just been a fun thing. We're not a real band. I mean, we're just a group of people who like to have fun.
But it's a really good, and I'm not just saying this as a publisher and promoter of the book here.
Right.
But I mean, it's a really rock solid collection. It's a lot of fun. It is only meant for people like us, folks. I mean, it really is. This kind of release is just a love letter to people who get it. There's not a lot of us, and that's one of the beautiful things about this is sort of tacked on as well. So with the bonus tracks, you gathered up 10 tracks. Talk a little bit about who you gathered up and who's appearing on that.
Oh, gosh, I don't have the list in front of me, but I tried to get stuff that had either been released only previously on vinyl or been out of print for a long time or had not been released at all, and concentrated on a lot of artists who are in the book, but not all of them are. So, for example, we have Mike Simmons with one of his other bands called Yorktown Lads, who include Addison Love, a very talented young man who just released his own solo album on Big Stir Records. They're another kind of pinnacle of the pop scene out here in LA.
Absolutely.
Rex and Christina, who run the label and run the whole Big Stir collective. Super, super nice people. So Addison is part of Yorktown Lads with Mike. they do this really cool Beatlesque cover of CCR's Green River, which is very cool. Previously unreleased, so that's cool.
Okay, I want you to play, next time you do a CCR song with Popdudes, I have a request. My favorite song, and I have no justification for it, because technically it really is just throwaway, but it's my favorite CCR, is Molina from Pendulum.
I haven't heard that one in years, but there is
2 minutes and 12 seconds of CCR perfection.
Well, on the Popdudes CD that's coming out with the book, there is a CCR cover on there. We did a version of Have You Ever Seen the Rain? And it's sort of a teenage fan club-esque version. And I want to go back to the Popdudes CD just for a second.
I'm done with that. I really don't. I mean, I'm spent. I don't. Yeah. No, I'm kidding.
I was joking. No, I want to go back and talk about Mike Simmons a little bit. Because,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to do this too. I mean, I'm so glad. I know. I hope you're going to say what because if you don't say what I think you're going to say, then I am going to say it.
Well, for better or worse, there would be no Popdudes if it wasn't for Mike. Mike, and I don't throw this word around lightly. Mike is something of a genius. He can play every instrument. He can sing amazingly, arranger, producer. He is just the most talented guy I know. And the bulk of these songs are Mike's creation. I just went in and played drums and tried not to screw him up too much. So just so fortunate to work with Mike. And he also, as you know, designed the artwork for the Popdudes CD and did a lot of other behind-the-scenes work there. That's really cool, too. The guy can do anything, and he's just amazing. And not only is he an amazing artist in his own right, he just released his first solo album, First Days of Summer, this past year, which is great. Not only is he an amazing musician, but he's a really, really good friend. He's like the brother I never had.
Yeah.
And which means we love each other and we argue all the time.
Do you really?
But in a loving way. Yeah. I mean, Mike is great. I've been such a pain in the ass about this Popdudes thing for so long, when Mike could have been doing a million other things that he needs to do. But he always indulges me and always just does an amazing job at whatever he does. And I'm so fortunate, not only that he's involved in this CD and involved in doing Popdudes, but that he's my friend. And, same goes for people like Robbie Rist, who's on this CD a lot. Kenny Howes is on the CD and a couple of tracks. Going back to the Michael Carpenter song, the song that he did that's on there, it's called Catherine. I wrote the lyrics about my mother. I'd been carrying those lyrics around after she passed away for a few years. I had given them to a few other people thinking, can you do something with this? I'd love to have something. And Michael did it and just hit it out of the park, so much so that every time I hear that song, I cry. Just every time. And that's a tribute to him. It's not my lyrics. Yeah. It's a tribute to how he put it all together, produced it, arranged it, sang it. It's beautiful. So,
well, anyway. I'm gonna do my broadside shorter comment about him. Is that we always talk about undiscovered talents all the time. Music geeks do, and geniuses gets thrown around a lot. Right. Lord knows, I've always I've just encountered so many geniuses in my time working in the music industry over 3 decades. From an executive producer, from a label side, from a distributor side of things. So an artist like Mike makes me wish I was still back in the game, to be able to create a platform, because I just think it's like, God, it's like, why have more power pop aficionados being aware of this guy? So I really encourage people to sort of dig into the Bandcamp with Sparklejets UK stuff and Michael's solo stuff. There's even more that many other people. He's one of those guys. Drop an email to. He's going to become your best virtual new friend in there. Yeah. So I wanted to make the same sort of comment about him as well.
And there's so much great stuff out there, and he just re-released a lot of it on vinyl. The 2 Sparklejets UK albums are now available on vinyl. The Yorktown Lads record he released on vinyl, the one with him and Addison Love. And his new record, Beautiful, again, called Birthdays of Summer, that's on vinyl as well as CD, and of course all the streaming platforms if that's what your pleasure is. But yeah, you know, just I'm so excited about the Popdudes CD because I've been promising, some may say threatening, to do this for some time. And I wouldn't do it, you know, I say it's just done for fun, but I wouldn't put it out there unless I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
You know, and again, that's not due to me. It's due to the people like Mike, especially, and then Robbie and Michael Carpenter and Kenny and everyone else who's performed.
It's a great add-on. The book is phenomenal. I'm not sure what the page count is going to be. Do we know where we're finishing up, where we're at with the page count
about
here?
419 pages.
419. Jeez, John.
It's a behemoth, is what it is.
Real quick, and now I'm gonna make my insertion here. The most valuable player to this project here throughout this year has been Jim Horan, who's been working diligently on this. He's one of my dear friends and massive supporters, and by far the most important MVP person in the Not Lame years and even Pop Gig Heaven. Brilliant graphic artist. More importantly, one of the nicest, most awesome gentlemen that is out there, and he's a huge music geek. And I have a great affection and love for him as a person and a talent. But he has done so many great things, and he's done a great job with the layout of this book. It's just not thrown together and just slapped together. No, not at all. So I got to insert my my praise for Jim Horan in this project.
Yeah, no,
and you've been making his life hell.
Definitely. No, I second that definitely. Jim has been amazing from the word go on this project. He's been committed to it. He's been committed to making it look the best that it can look. He's put up with all of my corrections and additions.
It's hard putting this stuff together.
It's not easy.
It really is. Getting a book together like this is not just taking a file and then laying it out. It is so much more that goes into the process of putting a book. And, I guess I'm just going to throw that out there just so people are aware. It's like these are big projects, and they're really, really hard to midwife and birth. They really, really are. Every single one of them.
It's not just a cut and paste job. You know, you just don't. Oh, well, here's the material. Oh, let me cut and then paste it into this, template. Oh, it's done. No, we've gone back and forth, Jim and I, and I'm not even sure if you know this. Well, we had an editor who took a whack at editing my manuscript, Debbie Shell, who I am forever indebted to.
Awesome.
And did a great job. But Jim and I, after Debbie did her edits, we've gone back and forth on tweaking this thing probably about 7, 8, 9, 10 times. So not only is Jim a gentleman and talented, he is also the most patient man I know, and I'm sort of glad he lives on the other side of the country. Yeah. Because if he lived in California, he might have tried to take my life by this time.
No, he would not do that.
I have not been easy on him, but it's only because I want to make this, like Jim does and like you do, want to make it the best that it can be. And
and it's there.
Jim is wonderful.
We're putting it, and speaking of, we're putting this to bed. And we're droning on here. So anybody who's listening to all of this, God bless you, most sincerely, and our pity as well. And I guess I'll open up the comments, but people are probably going to crucify me, not you, but for talking too much, probably. But that's what this is. All we're doing is having a conversation. So I hope you all are appreciating this. We should do something like this in more capsulated, like 15-minute form would be kind of fun. Like the little nuggets on reviews. But with the other part of the bonus stuff, which is really important here too, is, my good Lord, all the extra stuff that didn't make the first book in 2007, it's another book.
It is.
So I mean, it's not edited, and it's a mess. And like there's like a Not Lame label history interview that I did with Lee Zimmerman in like the year 2000. That just took me back to another time. It was like But there's some great stuff buried in there. But it is like another book, though, with the 40 plus documents that you'll get to be able to download and enjoy.
Right. As far as the bonus material that you get, I guess if you pre-order by September 30th, I think it was, it's not only the 10 bonus tracks that we put together, the digital compilation. I mentioned Yorktown Lads. There's also unreleased stuff from the Shazam, Brian Shaddix from the Southern California pop band The Tickets. There's a rare Fool's Face track on there. It's never been on a digital platform, never been on CD. A great song. There's unreleased Walter Clevenger and the Dairy Kings track. Haven't heard anything from Walter on record in quite some time. Super talented guy and a great friend. Awesome. All kinds of great stuff. There's a new Mark Johnson track on there. 12 in a Room, is released on your label on Not Lame. It's also now available on vinyl, by the way. So all you Mark Johnson fans, that's been released on vinyl and is out there. It was released in Spain. So there's a lot of cool stuff on that compilation. I've left some people out, but it's all wonderful stuff. I curated it myself. It's all stuff that I really enjoy. One of the songs I actually played on, tracked by Irene Pena, cover of Here It Goes Again, the OK Go song. If you're familiar with the video with the treadmills, it's that one.
Okay.
Irene is one of my favorites. Just some great stuff that she's done. So, but the written material. The original book, the original Shake Some Action book in 2007 was supposed to be a lot larger, but we had to sort of narrow the focus down a little bit. So with that, it left us with a lot of additional material, not only some things that I had written, but some things that a lot of other really talented pop writers or journalists have written. And that includes stuff from Lee Zimmerman, as you mentioned, Gary Pig Gold, Carl Caffarelli, who else? Bill Holmes, David Bash, Stephen Spaz Schnee.
You're listing off like a list of the all-time greats in the power pop writing area there.
Well, it's the people who are most passionate about it, and that's who I wanted. People who are passionate about this music, and just a lot of really cool stuff covering everything from. I think David Bash covered the J-pop scene, Japanese pop music. There are different articles about the Chicago scene, the New York pop scene. And then there's different lists and just all sorts of stuff. But like you said, 40-plus documents.
There's a Swedish pop rundown. There's a Parasol Records rundown. Big Deal Records kind of history, Australian. I'm just looking at Oddities history by Gary Littleton. A bunch of stuff from the Shoes guys, John Murphy and Gary Klebe, contributed some stuff. Spaz, Steve Schnee, wrote about UK power pop, and he is an expert on that as well. With his show always features lots of that UK mod pop. There and on. It really is another book. I highly encourage people to sort of do that. Also, keep in mind, I'll link this in the video too for folks. There is a small reprint that will happen with the original too, which hasn't been available for many years now. One of the reasons why it had to be small, this is a 9x9 book to sort of be emblematic of a vinyl record. Be kind of a coffee table book was what we were looking for back in the day. So that original format will remain with the reprint of the 2000 edition of the Ultimate Power Pop Guide.
If I can interrupt for a second here, Bruce, a lot of people have been asking, so how is this new one different from that one?
Yeah, we should do that and then sort of tie this up and wrap it up.
Yeah. So, I think they're two really separate and independent books. The first one has the top 200 and a bunch of other articles about power pop in general, history of power pop, a bunch of top 10 lists from people, that sort of thing. I didn't want to replicate or duplicate that with this new one. So not only is it a totally different top 200 list, but each of the entries has been re-edited. Some have been rewritten completely. Some have been rewritten partially. Every one of the 200 entries now has a new quote from an artist either the artist who produced the record, performed the record, or if they passed away or I wasn't able to get a hold of them, someone who is somehow connected to the record in some fashion. Brand new quotes, which have been very illuminating.
And that took a lot of time to put together, you know, in terms
it really did.
The reason why there wasn't sort of a 10th anniversary kind of edition of that was little parts of the project, but this was a big part that John wanted to do right, and not sort of stiff out on it and make that happen. But, you know, imagine trying to contact 200 artists. And then get them to write about sometimes a record. You know, you can talk about this. A record they don't really don't like talking about.
Right. Some of them didn't, and so sometimes I had to reach out to other band members. Some of them were very grateful to talk about it and were very effusive. You know, one of the gentlemen from the Searchers, and you'll see when you get the book, he wrote a huge article give me a very long quote about the Searchers' 1979 effort on Sire, which is in the book. So there's all new quotes. There's a lot of new material written for the old entries, and of course there's some brand new entries. What's also in there that wasn't in the first book is sort of a compendium of reviews I've written over the past decade or so, and that includes a lot of artists who are very worthy but might not be in the book, or those
and that you don't want to miss. I mean, this is what we talked about that a bit, and we both wanted that to be part of this because the whole thing is about that exploration, that journey, discovery of the new, and what has been overlooked. Because that's one of the struggles that we have as music fans right now, is that we've been feeding off a fire hose for so many years. And there's so much out there, and there's not enough time and years left to listen to all this stuff. So you really need an arbiter. You really need, you know, somebody to distill, like, hey, you know, pay attention to this stuff when you get a few moments. And that's what I love about the reviews, is you give people and me an opportunity to see what was missed the first time around, completely overlooked.
Yeah, so that's a large portion of the book as well. So it's pretty much a completely new book. I mean, so that's why if people want the old one,
very much so.
You kind of would want both, I would imagine, if you're a big power pop fan. And a lot of people have contacted me, and I know you over the years, saying, where can I get the original? I mean, I've seen it go. Somebody had it on Amazon for $700, which is
I remember that. Ridiculous. That was like crazy. But here's the thing. This is important. Actually, I'm glad you brought this up. And we are not self-promoting here. Please hear my heart with this. The truth of the matter is why books like Ken Sharp's books, even my Power Pop Prime books, but here most specifically and directly, Shake Some Action, never appear on Amazon, which is really unusual, folks, because most everything really does appear on Amazon. There's a reason why. It's because they're fucking awesome. And this book and it's real simple. It's like you don't let it go. And you know, profanity is necessary here because the passion is real. People don't get rid of their copies of these books, and specifically this one. That's why it never appeared. It was crazy. Never appeared because anybody that bought it, I mean, it's cherished, and it's important. It's a reference, and it matters.
They either loved it or they burned it. One of the two.
No, they didn't burn it. But I mean, and that says a lot about the importance and the history and the passion of power pop fans for having compendiums and encyclopedias and references like this book. And this next book is going to be the same thing. It's because these things disappear. They don't stay in print, and it just isn't the way. You can't sell these books on Amazon because publishers can't sell this stuff because Amazon takes 70% of every sale over $70. So it makes no sense whatsoever. And these books are. I've always used the analogy, John, of it's like they're college textbooks. I mean, they're written by experts. They're written by people with doctorates. in this realm, in this milieu, right? I mean, and you are that. You are a professor. You have the equivalent of a doctorate. You have many. Do you also have 3 decades of connection directly to the genre as a journalist, which we haven't had a chance to probe into, but I'll mention that. So you know what you're talking about. You've been in the trenches. And you know, it's not a $15 book, sorry. And it's a really small audience that are for this, but it's very specific. It is if you're listening to this right now, it's written for you. It's just that simple. And so take the opportunity to place an order here in the coming weeks, and certainly in the month of October. Not sure how long it's going to be available. So you don't want to sort of drag your feet on it, and you certainly don't want to look for copies for $700. But you still don't see it on Amazon. By the way, I mean, I've checked over the years. The last copy that I saw that was available that was even reasonable was $290 that somebody had on there. Crazy. Did somebody? I always wondered, did somebody buy that because it disappeared? Did somebody pay that for that? Oh my God! Well, there's no reason. There's no reason to, because you can pick one up for $35 with the reprint. So that order, just by the way, FYI, you got some little more time to be able to place the order up until about November 1st or so, maybe early November. After all the Shake Some Action books ship throughout, certainly maybe the last week of October, but certainly throughout November, then we'll take care of the orders for the reprint with that. So anything else that we've missed that we should cover here as we go on to?
No, I could chat with you all day, Bruce.
We've done that.
I just do want to say I thank everyone for their support, the folks who have pre-ordered already and who have had nice things to say on social media or have given the book and the CD some press. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's help in putting it together. We already mentioned Mike and we mentioned Jim. Of course, I want to mention you. I wouldn't be doing this without your help and your friendship, and both of those mean a lot. And I'm just happy to have this out there, and I hope people will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. I think they will.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And we go back to the early AOL days, John.
Yes.
When we were doing 1990, I have emails that I printed out from like want lists. Remember when we used to make want lists?
I still do.
Yeah, I still have. Yeah, but the written, I still have the ones from those times from 1990. I have emails from you, Jordan Oakes from Yellow Pills, and David Bash that go back to 1990-91. So we go way back as music buddies and friends. So anyway, thank you for hanging out with us. This has been a joy. Sorry this has extended out too long. You can fast forward. That's the beautiful thing, and you can speed up video with YouTube as well. I do all the time. I'm a 1.5 kind of guy. They're not with music though. I'm going to put some links down here below that you can go to get more information about the book and the reprint as well. And maybe I'll link up to some of the things that we talked about in this video as well, and make it sort of a helpful reference for people that have spent all this time with us here. So anyway, over and out. Any last words, John? I'll give you the last.
No, just thanks to everyone for your support. It's really, really appreciated, and I hope everyone likes the book and likes the CDs. I'm really proud of both.
Awesome. A pleasure, folks. Pop on.